Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's a little later than I usually come on, and it's a little darker. Let me add a little more light here. See if I can add a little more light. Okay, that's a little better. So, welcome back, everyone. This is my Dragon Oracle card series. My name is Gia, and today is Sunday, March 15th. The year is 2026, and it is time for a new Dragon Oracle this week. If you enjoyed spending time with the Black Dragon last week, then feel free, of course, to continue working with the Black Dragon. In the comments below, I'll share my reflections. But for this week, the week of March 15th, 2026, the Silver Lunar Dragon, I think this one came through before, but the Silver Lunar Dragon is the card for this week. So, Silver Lunar Dragon is bathing us in divine feminine light and asking us, reminding us, encouraging us to come into balance and practice peace, harmony, and cooperation, and to expand our causal chakra. That's that chakra that's right above the seventh. That's that sometimes called the eighth chakra. So the messages coming through, there were a few, so I took some notes so I don't forget. So this divine feminine light, this divine feminine energy. Now remember, I've talked about this before. Divine feminine and divine masculine energies are part of all of our energy signatures. We all have divine feminine and divine masculine energies. And it's not directly contingent upon whether you're in a biologically female or biologically male body. Sometimes there can be a direct correlation, but it's not contingent upon that. It's the expressed energy. And divine feminine tends to be that receptive energy, contemplative, receptive, receiving. And that divine masculine is that action oriented kind of energy. And they work in tandem. The goal is keeping those balanced, and balanced doesn't necessarily mean 50% divine feminine, 50% divine masculine, working like that all the time together. They ebb and flow, and they're when one becomes more pronounced at a certain given time, the other one may be less pronounced. But it's all, if we're in alignment with our intentions and our path and our purpose, it's going to do that naturally in order for us to continue to actually be in alignment with our path and purpose. So whatever's needed at any given time kind of moves its way to the forefront and just work in tandem and harmony together. So this divine feminine, this bathing in this divine feminine light, this divine feminine is helping to inform the actions, the manifestations of how divine masculine energy is going to help accomplish those things. So it reminded me kind of fire horse energy, like what's informing the fire horse energy, this divine receptive state of being where we're really pulling in that expanded divine consciousness wisdom that we've been cultivating. Like that eighth chakra is that information pathway, right? Between that expanded higher consciousness, our higher wisdom, our higher wise selves, our expanded light. That's what we've been cultivating. That's the information that's coming through in those receptive moments, those divinely receptive moments. It's important also to remember the significance of drawing upon that cosmic source energy, that lunar energy, the solar energy, the solar system energy, that cosmic energy, as well as grounding into earth source energy. So bathing us in divine feminine light is that receptive state of being as we continue to listen and tune our ears our hearts, our souls to what's coming through for us from the divine aspects of ourselves. And that information that we get, we are moving it into action-oriented manifestation, using that fire horse energy, using that divine masculine action-oriented energy. What other notes did I take? So balancing, coming into balance. Okay, the rest of these messages seem really to be about self right now. So coming into balance with ourselves in that regard, coming into balance with that divine masculine, divine feminine energy. And again, it's not always a 50-50 effort that we need to try to maintain. It's just letting the shifts happen between what becomes more prominent as needed, and then let it just ebb and flow and adjust accordingly, as we move from gathering information, the downloads, the gut feelings, the intuitive hits, the knowings. I'm getting a message here to, if you do a lot of dreaming, it doesn't necessarily have to be vivid dreaming where you're aware that you're dreaming. But if you remember your dreams, maybe keep a journal by your bedside and see if, as you jot those down, see if any other information or messages come through with that. But yeah, so moving from that divine receptive into divine action orientation. And then practicing peace. The message here from the Silver Lunar Dragons is about coming to a place of peace within our hearts, relative to the decisions that we're making, the discernment that we are actioning upon, the things that we are releasing, the frameworks, the old narratives, and letting them go. If there are really acute shifts and changes with relationships or jobs, or, for me, I just moved recently. And so, letting go of those things and coming to peace with that. And if there is a mourning associated with that, mourning, mourning, the loss of something that you used to have, even if it's something that is not aligned with you anymore, sometimes there is that sense of there's a visceral sense of loss of the familiar. And so it's important to honor that emotion, that feeling, and let that move through you. Don't assume that since I don't need it anymore, I shouldn't be sad that it's gone, or I shouldn't be reacting that way for something that I'm letting go. If your world involved that significantly, then on some level, there's probably some kind of an adjustment that somewhere along the way, whether it's consciously aware or not, that there's something that's different. And it is absolutely okay and important to acknowledge that it's not there anymore. And sometimes that there is that visceral sense of loss or mourning or grieving something. So we don't always necessarily just grieve for people or animals or pets that have transitioned. We can grieve for, and we can have sadness for letting go of a familiar place where we used to live, or familiar friends that, maybe relationships have changed, or a partner where relationships have changed. So coming to peace with those things, once we discern, if we've discerned and recognized that a shift like that, a significant shift like that is necessary and aligned for us, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be like really smooth sailing, and that's okay, right? That's a part of the journey. But really holding space for ourselves to move through the healing of it, letting go, let the emotions release, let the charged energy release, um, and letting it go. Um, Mourn and move on. um, a friend I really love, a new friend of mine, says we don't want to live too long in the um, trauma. We don't want to live too long in the trauma. Acknowledge it for what it is and mourn it if need be and move on. And that also doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't going to be ebbs and flows of moving through that, right? Ascension and healing is not a linear straight line, you know. It's often swirls and dips and sometimes feels like we're going backwards before we go forwards again. And that's all just a part of being these beautiful souls having these human experiences. So that aspect of coming into uh, practicing peace to get to a peaceful state of mind and being as we let go and move on from the things that we have discerned no longer serve us. Yeah, we don't need to expend too much extra energy once we've let it go. We don't need to linger the thoughts on that. We want to focus in on where we're going with, our manifesting, what we're stepping into, the new narratives, the new frameworks, the new normals. Um, and then coming into harmony, practicing harmony. Um, Again, that's the harmonizing of the divine masculine and divine feminine energy in this message here. Cooperation, coming into balance and practicing cooperation. This part of this message, again, it's coming back to the self. So, cooperation with the way this came through was cooperating with the messages that we get. So when we've cultivated this relationship, we're continuing to cultivate this communication. Um, each of us is cultivating how we uniquely communicate with our expanded wise selves, right? And so when we get that information, when we get the guidance and we get the downloads and we get, the gut feelings and the intuitive knowings, cooperating with that and actually following through, like figuring out what that means to follow through and put that into an action-oriented fire horse divine masculine action step of manifesting that and really being thoughtful about how that looks, for you. So we we were in that state of divine feminine receptivity to get the message. Now what do we do with the message? We cooperate with that expanded consciousness wisdom that's coming through, that we've been working so hard to be able to have a direct dialogue with, so to speak. And so now the cooperation aspect of that in this message is cooperating with that aspect of our awareness and our knowing. And our soul will not steer us wrong. Our soul knows exactly what we need to move through in order to become more aligned with our true path and purpose. And sometimes that's moving through contrasting uncomfortable experiences to gain deeper awarenesses of ourselves. So it's all part of it. If you've been following the Spirit Animal Oracle series, Koala came through with Spirit Has a Plan. So, yes, Spirit has a plan. The dragons have a plan. So that's about cooperation, listening and following through to the divinely guided downloads, information, um, guidance that we're getting. So, silver lunar dragons, bathing us in divine feminine light, coming into balance and practicing peace, harmony, and cooperation relative to the guidance that we are getting, and then continuing to expand that causal chakra, that eighth chakra right above our seventh. That's that connection to that expanded consciousness, wisdom, that collective consciousness, wisdom. So, again, my name is Gia, and I am an intuitive. I am a psychic energy reader and healer, and I offer 30-minute readings on these dragon cards that come through. And if you contact me this week, I will offer a 50% discount on that reading. So, the $70 reading will be $35. And the messages that will come through will be nuanced for you, as it will be an individualized reading for you. The information that I intend to pull through, that comes through for this series, is for the collective, right? So whoever happens to be tuning in or watching at any given time in the future. And again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, not that often, but I've been guided to do this weekly. But that said, if you happen to tune into this message 3 months from now, the intention is that it will still be a relevant, resonant message for you, and that it will still be significant, and the healing will still be just as impactful, regardless of when you happen to watch the recording. So, all right, so let's go ahead and we'll move right into the healing part of these cards. So I do work with symbols as a technique for energy healing. It is a way to stabilize and consolidate energy. And the symbols can either come through as, I have a feeling this one might be an affirmation, but sometimes that energy comes through, that symbol comes through as an affirmation, which is a message that the dragons, that spirit wants to bring through to the forefront of our awareness, something to celebrate, something to acknowledge and recognize as a strength that's prevalent, that's going to help us at this time, like a little cheerleading boost of support to keep going. Most often, because I do tend to look at energy that is outdated, no longer useful, kind of clogging up the tubes and the gears of our natural energy flows, and it will be useful to help move it out of the way. So most often symbols do come through as just that energy that's ready to go, that's time for it to be uprooted and moved out of our collective energy field. So I am going to ask these silver lunar dragons. Look how beautiful this image is. I just love it. These are some of my favorite colors, this purple and all of these like blues and purples in the cosmos around it. And the moon here. It's beautiful silver lunar dragon. So I am going to ask these dragons to bring through a symbol that is aligned for me to take a look at for the collective group of us. And we'll heal that symbol. And yeah, we do heal affirmation symbols. The energy that's cleared and healed from affirmation symbols is energy that's interfering with our ability to embody the positive message and to really integrate into our lives that positive message and that positive energy and support from the silver lunar dragons. So I'm going to go silent for a little bit while I tune into what that symbol is. And while I do that, I encourage you to go ahead and reflect on these messages, bathing you in divine feminine light. Have you recognized recent times lately where you've been in that contemplative, receptive, reflective state of being where, are you recognizing information coming, in the silent moments or in meditations or, in grounded moments? Do you feel like you're able to be that receptor for that information? What does that look like for you? Coming into balance and practicing peace and harmony and cooperation with yourself as you do get those messages, as you do ebb and flow between receiving the information and then moving into action-oriented steps to apply that information to your life. What does that look like for you? Do you feel like that's happening? Do you want more of that to happen? Are you uncertain what the messages are telling you? Do you feel like you're getting any messages at all? And then expanding that causal chakra. So continuing to bring those practices in your life that help you to be in that receptive state, to connect in with that expanded consciousness. So for many of us, that is a meditative practice. That is sitting in meditation in specific intentional ways. Some of us, that might look like being out in nature, doing something that makes you feel connected to your grounded self, to the earth, to the collective. I know that I really enjoy moving through the creative process. So painting or writing or drawing and or creating sculptures or whatever, collages, and when I'm in that flow, when you're in the zone, like that's being connected to that expanded consciousness, right? Like you're just kind of in that zone and you could kind of feel like you could be there forever. You sort of lose sense of time and space and all that. And you're just really zoned in and focused in. I love being in that energy. We all have access to that energy. So whatever you do in your life that brings that being in the zone state of being, do more of that. That will help to connect you in with your own expanded consciousness. You are an expression, a unique expression of the collective, the divine collective consciousness that is everything. And so being able to tap into that, being in the zone kind of moment is really cool. When I was in art school, I'm being guided to share this example. I was in art school and I took this class that taught me how to weld steel. It was so cool. So I'm in the welding studio, and I think each studio session is about 2-3 hours or so. And I started working on this project, and I was just in the zone. I just was moving through whatever I was doing. I don't even remember exactly what I was working on. I think it was a final project for something that I had to present, but I was in the zone and enjoying it, and all sense of like time just became irrelevant. I was just doing what I was doing. And then once that studio time was over, it was like the I don't know who you call the person in charge of like keeping track of who's coming and going in the studio, had to kind of tap me out of the ring because I was just in the zone. I could have been there, well, forever or until whatever I was doing felt complete. But they're like, okay, it's time for you to go now. And so coming back out of the zone, I remember walking out of the welding studio, and then all of a sudden it hit me that like, oh, wow, I'm really hungry. I haven't had anything to eat for like 3-4 hours. And then I also realized, oh shoot, I need to use the bathroom. So like in that zone, sometimes you're just in a whole nother place. So I really enjoyed that about being in art school, because I had so many opportunities to be in the zone with lots of different ways to be creative. So think about those things in your own life, right? Do you really like gardening? Does that bring you to that creative, connective state, where you just are really in that zone? Do you like walking through nature or going on hikes? Do you enjoy dancing or singing? So it doesn't have to be, sitting, in lotus and, that sort of potentially stereotypical way that you would imagine, like, the proper way to meditate. Like there's so many different, as many different people that there are on the planet, there's that many different ways that connecting into that zone for you, grounded into your present moment, sitting in the silence, connecting in with the silence that you'll find is actually not so silent. At least I do. Yeah, you'll find your own ways that feels aligned and in the pocket and grounded. So yeah, that causal chakra, expanding that causal chakra, that connection. So, however you feel most aligned with being able to have that conversation. And of course, I'm speaking metaphorically with that conversation, because we're really speaking with ourselves, right? We're channeling information from our expanded consciousness. So, it's really a dialogue, a quote unquote dialogue with ourselves. All right. So, contemplate. I encourage the contemplation of those things as I tune into the silver lunar dragons and ask them for a symbol that represents energy that is ready to come to the forefront, an alignment to be released. On this day, March 15th, 2026, and I am intending that that's the symbol that comes through represent energy for the collective, for the group of us that will be watching this recording at any given time. What's coming through just seems to be it's not the moon, but it seems to be just a very large sphere of glowing light. So I'm trying to get more information on exactly what this symbol is so I can pull through those messages. So bear with me. So grounding this symbol to the center of the earth, connecting with earth source energy, excuse me, cosmic source energy. Okay, so this symbol is actually like the glowing light of like a spaceship. And there's aliens in this spaceship. And the message coming through is the new ways that we are learning to communicate with ourselves and each other on a soul level, energetically, telepathically, they feel foreign. They sometimes feel alien. They feel strange. It's new. It's different. But the dragons, these silver lunar dragons, are encouraging us to remain curious, right? Like, in the same way that you can imagine that, regardless of how you feel about alien life, you know, out there on other planets and all of that and other solar systems and everything, this is coming through as a metaphor. So it's like, the process, the way the information comes through, like light codes, for example. That was a new and interesting endeavor for me when my other teacher was helping me learn about what light codes are and how to interpret them for myself. And really, um, it was pretty straightforward once I kind of got out of my head about it. It's the same principles of how I, gather information from, these symbols. Like it just being open to the possibility, right? Being open to the possibility sometimes is just enough to open that communication channel, if you will, for that information to come through. And I remember one morning talking about light codes. I remember one morning I was waking up. A lot of times for me, I don't necessarily have to be sitting in what I refer to as intentional meditation for information to come through. Often I'm actually more receptive to it when I'm not, interestingly enough. So I do keep a journal by my bedside. So this one morning as I'm waking up, I just got a flash of an image in my mind's eye. Seemed pretty random to me. So I actually just, it seemed really cool. And it was at the time when I was learning about light codes, so I wasn't surprised. So I was open to the possibilities. And I just took out my journal and I started drawing what it looked like in my mind's eye, like not worrying about how perfect or not it needed to be. And it went through different variations, this image. And then I just started being curious. And I asked the ethers, I asked my consciousness, I asked my spirit, what does it mean? What does that mean? What does this symbol mean? And when I'm working with clients and I am encouraging them to be curious in the similar way with what their spirit might be wanting to share with them, I kind of encourage the curiosity like a game of like word association, only it's more like how like with word association you want to like think of the first word that comes to your mind without thinking about it. So when you ask those kind of questions of your higher consciousness, of your spirit, of the dragons, trust the first answer that comes and go with it. Like don't overthink it and just trust the first answer. And then if you need more clarification, ask for more clarification and trust the answer. If nothing comes, trust that and ask again. Maybe think about a different way to ask, or maybe ask what's keeping me from hearing the answer or knowing the answer or sensing the answer. And also be open to the answer coming in a non-word kind of way. You might get a gut feeling, a knowing, a smell, a sound that helps to inform the answer. So this symbol is this sphere, this glowing sphere spaceship with these aliens, and this is representing the unfamiliar, the new territory, um, for how we are learning this new language of ourselves, how we are learning the new language of our soul and our spirit as we step in and keep stepping further into these new definitions of ourselves, these new narratives, these new capacities for trusting our gifts and our intuitions and our knowings and our psychic abilities We all have access to intuition. That's, intuition, imagination, all of those, even those physiological ways that present when spirit's trying to get our attention, when our consciousness is trying to get our attention. That's all spirit communication. I developed these skill sets with someone who helped to kind of hone in those skills and abilities, and taught me different techniques for how to do that. But we all, the source of where that comes from is the collective consciousness, conscious awareness, expanded consciousness. And we all have that. We all have that as these souls, these beings of light having human experiences. So, we all can tap into that. Again, I keep talking about it. The gut feeling, the butterflies in the stomach, the goosebumps, or shivers that you feel like if somebody's talking about something that resonates with you. Sometimes you get goosebumps, or you might get a swell of emotion, or sometimes when something's happened or happening and you get like the hair standing up in the back of your neck, or sweaty palms, or your ears start to get red or start to feel hot. Like, all of those things are ways that our consciousness is getting our attention. Our conscious awareness is getting our attention. And it doesn't necessarily mean getting our attention because there's a bad thing getting ready to happen or happening. It's just getting used to this new vocabulary, these new ways of communicating, having sometimes just that knowing. Sometimes even I know people who, you might get a phone call from a friend or a family member that you haven't heard from in ages, and you knew they were going to call. Like, you thought about them, and then all of a sudden they call, or vice versa. So all of those are ways that our spirit, our collective consciousness, our conscious awareness communicates with us. So getting used to the new ways to speak about this, the new ways to experience this, and we're creating new vocabulary and new context as the veils are thinning, and as humanity is ascending, and as an ascension here for me in this context, it doesn't mean ascension to the point of like, okay, I've ascended and I've learned everything I need to learn in this lifetime, and now it's time for me to transition, and I no longer need to incarnate again in a new human experience, or a new experience in another being. So ascension is a constant, ongoing transformation process that is inevitable as we move through our human experiences. So that's what ascension means to me in my experience of energetics, and my vantage point of spirituality. So I am getting confirmation that this symbol is an affirmation. It's energy that the dragons are showing as like, here's a metaphor, a metaphoric snapshot of the processes that we're all going through, figuring this out, and aliens are foreign. They're not, for most of us, they're not, or I'm going to presume, I don't know how many of you out there have experienced relationships with aliens. I do have star beings that I am cultivating a relationship with, but anyhow, the unfamiliar. So these aliens represent the unfamiliar. And so this new context of these new narratives, the new normals that we are manifesting and creating through the natural process of ascension and self-reflection, and cultivating that continued cultivation of bringing through that expanded consciousness wisdom into manifested actions along our aligned path and purpose in life. A lot of it feels foreign, new, different. We're getting accustomed to different ways that communication can happen. So it's not necessarily like picking up the phone and saying, hey, higher consciousness, expanded consciousness wisdom, what did you mean when you showed me that image of, that light code? It may very well be like verbalizing the question, but the answer may come in so many different ways. There's so many different possibilities for that. And it may not come directly. I might ask that question and then not really get much until a week later or a month later or something, when something triggers that connection again to that information. So not being afraid to let go of the traditional ways that we tend to think about gathering information. Book smarts and research and studying things is absolutely a fabulous way to gather information, but that does not discount, that does not cancel out information that comes through knowing, through developing your intuition and trusting your intuition and following that guidance. It doesn't discount the knowings that you get. So that is equally valid ways of gathering information. So clearing and healing the charged energy around this symbol, what we're clearing and healing is those belief systems that prevent us from trusting that we have that capacity to be able to move through this learning curve of how we are gathering our conscious wisdom, our collective conscious expanded divine wisdom and guidance. So I'm going to continue to clear and heal this symbol on this day, March 15th, 2026, for the collective group of all of us who will be watching this video. Thank you so much, Silver Lunar Dragons, for this symbol and this information. It's coming through for me to share that, tapping into that creative energy, that we all have, like what drives you and helps you feel grounded in that zone. Sometimes doing that when you're uncertain about something, like hold the intention of like, hold the intention of gathering an answer to help you interpret what information you might be getting, and then move into that activity, that meditation, that gardening, that painting, that writing, that singing, that dancing, and hold that intention of holding space for the possibility that the answer will come through as you are in the zone through that creative process. That is often a very cathartic way that I get information. Sometimes I just start writing, and I don't have to write complete sentences. I can just start writing words, and as I continue to write, I get more information. So being in the flow and in the zone of that creative process can help pull those answers and clarity out as well. Our whole life, our whole moving through our life, we can look at as a meditation. Oh, again, I think about the monks that just did that walk for peace, that they live their life as a meditation. It's not separate. That frame of mind, that mindset, those belief systems, it's how they live and move through life. And we can do that in our own unique ways as well. So clearing and healing the energy around those belief systems that limit our belief in our capacity and ability to hold space for all of these possibilities, and to trust that we will be guided in the ways that are in alignment with us to help learn this new language of how we are communicating with our souls, with ourselves, um, with that expanded consciousness, awareness, and wisdom that is within all of us. And how we as individuals moving through our life experiences as a part of this collective are able to learn and discern and interpret the guidance that we are getting from this expanded consciousness, and moving that through our lives as manifest action to be more in alignment with how we want to be of service to others, our visions and our missions, moving those into manifestation and accepting and trusting that guidance, cooperating with that guidance from our expanded consciousness. March 15th, 2026. We don't need to be doubtful anymore. We can have fun and stay curious and keep asking questions and being open to where and when the answers may come. So that symbol is clear for the collective group of us. Just tapping in and tuning in to see if there's any other messages that want to come through from these silver lunar dragons. So this week, as we move forward this week, inviting the silver lunar dragons to join us on our journeys this week and beyond, if you'd like. Think about, how it might look for you to be more intentional about, or be aware. Okay, there it is. Thank you for clarifying what you are wanting me to encourage us to do, to share how you're encouraging us to move through this week. So the silver lunar dragons want us to stay curious and see if we can be aware of those times when it seems like we are in a receptive state for those downloads, those gut feelings, those intuitions, those knowings, and take note of what the scenario is that's playing out around us. Are we in an intentional meditation? Are we washing the dishes and doing laundry? Are we in the car driving somewhere? Are we talking with a friend on the phone? Are we sleeping? Are we waking up from sleeping? Are we falling asleep? See if you can bring your awareness to when you seem to notice how those downloads come for you, how that information seems to come for you. Not the mechanics of it, but just like what happens to be going on in the 3D when you get some of this information coming. And just pause for a moment and recognize that as a divinely feminine receptive state of being that is a way that these silver lunar dragons are supporting you in this endeavor, bathing you in this divine feminine light. So that divine feminine energy. Coming into balance and practicing peace, harmony, and cooperation. So see if you can bring your awareness to, what do you typically do when you get those downloads? Do you say, that's curious, and don't do anything else with it? Or, do you dismiss it? Do you start to try to figure out what it means? Do you go down a rabbit hole of like, overthinking and like, oh my God, what does that mean? What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? I don't know. Da, 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 da. Does it take you in that direction or somewhere in between? And see if there's any, see if you can incorporate some more curiosity into, how you might be able to do something differently than what you typically do when you are in those moments of getting that download. See if you can be curious and inquire about how that download or piece of information or inspired encouragement or direction can move into an action-oriented manifested step. Like, what does that mean? And it could even be about, hey, here's an opportunity for some deeper healing. Let's move into an action step on that. Or, time to let that go. Or time to move through some more release and then let it go. Like, see if you can bring your awareness to those, how you've typically moved through getting that information, and then maybe shifting into a different approach or a different way of looking at it. And there's no right or wrong way, just being curious about how it all works for you, getting used to these new normals, right? And then continuing to do the work that we've been doing. This is where a lot of this affirmation comes from is, the truth is there is, despite being in this action-oriented fire horse energy of the Chinese New Year, there is still that harmonious balance of divine feminine. And these silver lunar dragons are wanting us to recognize that, and that how important that is to make sure we are allowing that shifting and ebbing and flowing of divine feminine and divine masculine as needed. So they are here to help hold space for those moments of when that divine feminine light and energy is going to be really helpful and useful for you as you call upon and pull through from your expanded consciousness those downloads and guidance and direction for you on your path in this life. So continuing to cultivate that relationship and learn that new language of your soul. All right. Thank you, Silver Lunar Dragons. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in whenever you end up tuning into this message. And once I post this, I'll see if I can share a couple of reflections from last week for myself personally with the Black Dragons. And I'd love to read any one of your reflections as well. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Until next time.